What is your next step? A lot of us ask ourselves that question all the time. What's my next step after this meeting? What am I going to do? What is my next step in life? After I gave my first speech in Toastmasters, which was my icebreaker, I asked myself that question. What is my next step? I wanted to complete the Competent Communicator manual as quickly as I could. 10 speeches, no problem. I can do that. My work schedule changed, and I was no longer to attend meetings on Friday. When my schedule changed again, I rejoined the club. I gave my first speech in March 2013. Second speech was June 2014. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. How many of you have heard that before? I heard that a long time ago. It stuck with me, and I've always said that to myself. In researching for this speech, I looked it up. I Googled it, and it's actually a saying by the U.S. Navy SEALs. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Remember that when you're working on your next 9 speeches. I gave my second speech, and after the second speech, I realized a couple of things I talked about, it just wasn't enough. For example, I talked about being persistent and being determined when you set goals. Sounds really good. I'm persistent, I'm determined, I'm going to make it happen. But how are you going to make it happen? I realized after the second speech, I need to do a little more. So I came up with 3 tactics to help me work my way through the next 8 speeches. Today, I'm going to share some information with you regarding the tactics I used. In addition, I have a couple of stories I want to share with you, and I have a few more quotes. Tactic number 1, get a mentor. Getting a mentor will help you tremendously in preparing and knowing what to talk about in your speeches. Here at Toastmasters, we have a mentorship program where an experienced and outstanding public speaker will team up with you and help you come up with a plan to accomplish your goal. Maybe it's 10 speeches, maybe it's 1 speech. It's up to you. Number 2, schedule your next speech on the day you are scheduled to give a speech. And here's the reason I do that. Whenever I give a speech, when I'm done, I sit down, I feel good. I can do the next speech, no problem. So I go on to Easy Speak online, and I schedule the next speech. That second tactic helped keep me on track in reaching my goal. Number 3, what if I were perfect technique. I talked about this technique in earlier speeches. It's very simple. When you find yourself sitting there and maybe you're a little frustrated, say to yourself, what if I were perfect? What would I do? How would I handle this situation? If you don't know, think about it and say, what if I were perfect? How would I figure this out? Those are the 3 tactics I used to get to this speech today, which is the number 10 speech. Like I said earlier, I started in March of 2014 when I gave my second speech. March to April, May, June, July, August. 5 months later, here I am on speech number 10. Comparison is the thief of joy. Theodore Roosevelt said that. And I want to share that with you because when you stand up here and you deliver a speech, sure, you're nervous. When you're on speech number 1, and that's all you've done, and you sit here every Friday and you watch other speakers deliver speeches and you're blown away, how could I ever be like Fred? How could I ever be like Don? Comparison is the thief of joy. Don't compare yourself to other people. Simply set up your plan and work your plan. What is inspiration? Inspiration is a noun. It's the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something. I think inspiration is the catalyst to action. Action is the foundational key to all success. Pablo Picasso said that. How many people here set a New Year resolution in January of this year? I set several. I always do. With all the goals I established, I realized one of the things I need to do is to get up earlier every day. And I already get up early. My work day starts at 6:30 a.m. I arrive at work at 6:15, and I leave for work at 5:45. So generally I wake up at 5 a.m. But I set a lot of little goals. For example, every day during the month of January, I'm going to do 10 push-ups. Every day for 31 days, 10 push-ups. Small goal. How are you going to do it? Take action. And I did that. I actually started getting up every day at 4:30 rather than 5 a.m. In addition to that small goal, I have several small goals, and I work them every day. Now, here's how you get up early. You have an alarm on your cell phone, right? And like other people, maybe you have a couple of cell phones or maybe a couple of alarm clocks. The key is to set your alarm. And what I do is I have my alarm on my cell phone and I have an alarm on my old cell phone. And I put them in the other room and I pick the worst sounding ringtone possible. And I set them up where they go off every day that I'm scheduled to work. So when these alarms start going off, I have to get up and I have to turn them off. So now that I'm already up, I go ahead and I start my day. And that's one of the things that I just kind of worked on and figured out. It may sound a little silly, but it does work. And you'll realize when you want to change your behavior, you've got to come face to face with the physical force that's required to change that behavior. The physical force of me getting out of bed, 2 annoying cell phones in the other room going off at 4:30 a.m. Another goal for this year was I wanted to write every day in my journal. And I said to myself, my goal is to write every single day. However, I don't need to write a novel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write at least one sentence every single day. There are days when I look at my journal entries from the last couple of months, and I put the time on there, 4:33 a.m. Today I'm writing in this journal. I don't want to do it, but I'm doing it anyway, period. That's it. Goal accomplished. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle said that. How many here have heard of a bike-a-thon? When I was 9 years old, I entered a bike-a-thon. Now, for a 9-year-old boy, a bicycle is the most important thing in his life. When I grew up, when I was 9, in a small town, about 1,000 people, I rode my bike everywhere. I didn't have a cell phone, I didn't have a helmet, I didn't even have water. I would just ride all day long. Growing up in a smaller town, at the age of 9, not really knowing any better, whenever I got thirsty, I would actually just go over to neighbors' houses and ask them for a drink of water. Sometimes I would even go to their water hose and turn it on and drink water there and just keep going. So towards the end of the summer, there was a bike-a-thon taking place, and this was a charitable event. I really didn't understand the charity aspect of it. I understood I needed to get pledges. So I walked around door to door asking for people to donate money to this bike-a-thon. And they had 2 choices. They could pledge money, like $5, for example, or they could pledge for every mile of the race. Well, when you're 9 years old, you don't know what a mile is, but you know what a dollar is. After I gathered all my pledges and the bike-a-thon came around, I rode my bike. The course was about a 1 mile loop of city blocks. I rode all day long. And it's simply because I was conditioned to riding all day anyway. I rode 31 miles. And when I went back to collect money from people, they couldn't believe I rode 31 miles. A little kid with a bicycle coming to collect money for the charity. But everyone was surprised and they all paid up and they loved it. It was a very memorable experience. Whatever you do will be insignificant, but it is very important that you do it. Mahatma Gandhi said that. A few years ago when I lived in Denver, Colorado, I had a couple of roommates. One day I walked in and the house was immaculate. One of my roommates had cleaned the entire place. The dishes were done and put away, the floors were vacuumed and wiped down, the pillows on the couch were perfectly placed, the laundry was done, the towels were washed and folded. I couldn't believe it. I asked my buddy Michael, what happened? The house is clean, I can't believe it, who did this? He went on to tell me that John did it. Well, out of the 3 of us, John was the laziest person in the house, and I couldn't believe that he actually cleaned it. So I asked a few more questions, why did he do this? What was his inspiration? And he told me he just saw the movie Castaway. And after he saw Castaway, He came home, he cleaned the entire house, and then when he finished, he went to the gym to go work out. And I was like, wow, I gotta see this movie. The movie Castaway, starring Tom Hanks. In the movie, Tom Hanks is known as Chuck Nolan. He's a FedEx employee. He is a logistics specialist. He's obsessed with being on schedule. Well, in the movie, he's on his way to Malaysia. The plane crashes in the Pacific Ocean. Everyone perishes except for Chuck Nolan, played by Tom Hanks. He's the survivor, and he washes up on an uninhabited island. But he wasn't by himself. He had Wilson to keep him company. Wilson was the volleyball character in the movie Castaway. One of the writers of the movie, his name is William Broyles Jr. While doing research for the film, he deliberately stranded himself on an island for 1 week. He was on an island down by the Sea of Cortez. It was completely deserted, and there were only and he forced himself to survive. He had to search for his food and water and also construct his own shelter. So over the 7-day time span, a volleyball washed up on shore. That volleyball was the inspiration for that writer to come up with the inanimate character we now know as Wilson, which actually played a very big part in the movie Castaway. It may be small and insignificant, but you never know what's going to inspire you. Think about your next step. My next step, it's somewhat sad, but I am excited about it. I learned recently the current occupation that I'm in. I'm keeping my job. However, I'm getting transferred to another location at the end of September, and that's going to be my next step. Being in this club has been one of the best experiences I've ever had, and I'm grateful for this experience. Madam Toastmaster.